We didn't ask this question for Chris Sutton because obviously he didn't go abroad. He says let's include Scotland. I mean, that's abroad, but the likes of me and Mac, obviously, Real Madrid and Inter Milan.
Shall I go?
So just, can you not leave this part? Can you not leave this part? Anyway, so, I mean, I think that the hardest thing for me at the time was because I was trying to 26, 27, never wanted to leave Man United at the time. So it was more of a kind of family decision, taking Thomas over, who was only 2 at the time, you know, learning a different language, learning a different culture. And I was happy where I was staying. Looking back on it, it was probably the best move I ever did. You know, it probably was the best football I ever played. Macca would tell you, you know, the food they eat, the weather, everything about it, the football, it made me a better player. And it was something I'm glad I really did.
Why did you choose to go there?
I didn't choose. I mean, Man United accepted a bid for me from Inter Milan. So, like anything, when someone accepts a bid...
You still could have turned it down. I
could have turned it down, but, you know, it was a case of, you know, I didn't feel right after 6 years at Man United. They'd accepted a bid behind my back, wasn't too pleased about that. And, you know, I was kind of worried from a family point of view. From a football point of view, I think it could work. From a family point of view, I was a bit concerned. And I think as I came back 2 years later, that was because of family reasons. But Mac will tell you, it was fantastic. I loved it out there. I'm glad to see that younger kids are now going out there. I think it was different in my time because everyone spoke Italian. There was no English going about in 96, 97, same in Spain. Nowadays it's more global, everyone's speaking English, so it's easy for 17-year-old, 18-year-old kids to go out there and settle in a comfortable environment.
How big of a problem was that for you then, the language barrier?
I can't take it seriously. I'm waiting for the punchline with him.
There's no punchline. It must be a big issue. It must be.
It was, especially the first couple of months. I struggled the first couple of months. I mean, going into the first meeting and going out for dinner, which would normally last 3 or 4 hours. Everyone's speaking Italian. You kind of sat on the edge of the table, haven't got a clue what they're saying, and you can have these just kind of negative thoughts in your head to say, I think I made the wrong decision here. Did you think that at the time? I did, because my wife Claire was struggling with the language. Thomas was going to Italian school, he was only 2. So there was a lot of things that weren't really, I felt really comfortable with. But once Roy Hodgson came in, because the manager at the time was Ottavio Bianchi, and he played me left wing. I was playing left wing. I just played 6 years at centre midfield for Man United, and he put me in a left wing position. So that didn't help. But once Roy Hodgson came in and I grasped the language, started interacting with my teammates, Claire did for a certain while, then it became a lot easier.
So when you say it was brilliant and I learned loads, what was it that was so good about that experience, from your perspective?
Well, one, I lived on Lake Como, which is probably one of the nicest places in Milan. 2, just the way, the discipline about the training. You know, we used to get there in the morning, we used to do, you know, 45-minute stretch in the morning.
How different was it to what you'd done in your previous few seasons at United?
It was a lot different, you know, because the training used to last a lot longer, and it wasn't just based on going in, warm up, 20 minutes, straight into games. You know, here it was like you'd stretch for 45 minutes, you train for an hour and a half, then you stretch for another 45 minutes. The food that you ate, you know, made me feel better. It was more based on a technical game. You know, it wasn't as quick and high octane as the Premier League. It was very slow, then fast in the last third minute. And you know, I remember when I first played, and we played, I think it was Perugia, and I've got the ball and I've sprayed it out to Xavier Giannetti. And you know, you wait for the crowd to applaud, thinking, they didn't do nothing. And I thought, they're not having me, you know what I mean? Because
Really?
they expect you to do that. You know, whereas in England,
Yeah.
they go, what a ball that is. And that's what the expectations were different, but it made me fitter, stronger, made me more of a man. You have to grow up quickly when you go abroad, and I think, you know, for these young kids now, you know, they have to grow up quickly.
Does that story ring bells with your experience?
Yeah, the first 3-4 months are always the hardest months. You know, because of course, as Ince's rightly said, I go along with everything he says. You're trying to learn the language, of course you are. But while you're with your teammates in training camp or at a game, you've got your family struggling. And of course, the first thing they will do if they're not learning the language, or they can't buy this, or they can't, you know, furnish the house, is call you.
Yeah.
I'm having a problem with this, I'm having a problem with that. It's not... the teams back then were not as costly as the English teams now, where you've got everybody looking after everything you want to do. If you want to pay a bill, someone in the club will do it. If you want to buy the television, someone in the club will do it for you. If you need to go out and eat, someone in the club will translate for you. It wasn't like that then. So the first 3 or 4 months, you literally had to sit with friends, like Ince just said, and they'd witter on, and you'd be there, and you'd smile, and you'd laugh, and you'd thumbs up, and you just had to show that, you know what, I'm in it for the long term, I'm going to learn. On planes, going back and forth from games, you've got homework, you're back to school, you know, you've got homework learning languages, reading books, reading phrase books. And it's hard work.
And I guess you can't rely on anything at that point but your football. So your football then becomes everything, doesn't it? You got to impress these guys on the training pitch, in the matches. That's what it becomes.
And again, that's the hard part, because you learn. You've played with a team. I played at Liverpool for 11 years prior to me leaving. But I was used to every player knowing exactly what they were going to do. I knew that Robbie Fowler would be there. I knew that John Barnes would be there. Michael Owen would be there. And suddenly you're with a teammate who, you know, you have to learn, firstly, how to communicate with them, but secondly, have to understand their movements and if they're going to come and go and spin and turn, and do they like it to the feet, do they like it over the top. So it's just a slow process getting there, getting to grips with everything.
So when you were playing and you learnt the language, it was easier for you to play?
Yes, it was easier because your communication skills, your ability then to deal with the press and give them what you want and show them that you're not this, you know, cold English person who's not willing to learn the language. We see all the foreign players come in now, they all know English or they learn English double quick, don't they? And the English are considered quite ignorant, really, the fact that we can't go and learn languages and stay and get on. Because the question I get asked a lot when I'm abroad is, why aren't more English people playing abroad? And I mean, that's a different answer now, because of course the English Premier League is so good and so professional, and the facilities are much better than everywhere across Europe. I understand why people stay here. But it's one of those that you have to just keep chipping away at barriers and barriers and barriers until you're fully integrated in society.
So there were 2 goals today for Reiss Nelson. Jadon Sancho got on the score sheet again today. Because of the success, particularly of Sancho leaving City, ending up in the England squad a few months later, do you think it's time for us to see more of this, more young English players going abroad and getting an opportunity that they wouldn't get over here? I mean, you know, Jadon Sancho compared to what Phil Foden's going through at the moment, where would you rather be?
Phil Foden's an interesting one, isn't it? I think that they are doing the right thing. You know, what do these young players need? They need time. What don't managers have in the Premier League? Time. So they have to, you know, to work out where is best for them to go. And I really admire these young, because these are young men. I mean, Paul, you're 26.
26.
Yeah, I was as well. Yeah, 27. Yeah.
When they knew their game better and had matured as people and players, or supposedly matured, and you know, these guys are going at a young age. I take my hat off to them. I really.
What I would say now is that a lot of teams in Europe, Real Madrid send a lot of their players to Germany. Liverpool have sent players to Germany, sent players to Holland. You know, there's a real appetite now by our clubs to get players to go abroad. It's not just, let's go down the road to a Championship club or a League One club. They're very, very happy to get them abroad and experience and broaden the horizons.
Chelsea have the link, don't they, with Vitesse?
Just on them.
So these young players have to. That's the biggest thing, playing, and that they need to get game time.
Would you recommend to Tom to go abroad at any point?
He had a chance to go. You know, after he could have gone to Inter Milan. After Blackpool, he could have gone to Monaco. But I think he was only 22 at the time.
But why didn't it happen?
I think he just felt more comfortable that he wasn't ready for that yet. You know, I think, you know, leaving Blackpool, he just felt, you know, he wasn't ready for it to go and live there, you know, on his own, because there was a language barrier. Not so much now, because as Macca said, football's now so cosmopolitan. You know, everyone has to speak English, you know, so it's easy to settle in. But he just felt he wasn't right for him at the time. For me, it would have been great, go. I just played.
And do you get involved in those conversations, or do you sort of allow Tom to make those decisions?
Listen, you know, I'd say, of course, I'll have my opinion on what I think he should do, but ultimately it's down to my son to decide what he's got to do. He's the one who's going to be out there. And it can be a lonely life. You know, my wife would tell you that.
Yeah.
You know, when I was at Inter Milan, they own you like 24 hours a day, doing functions, staying at the hotel where you didn't come home. So, you know, my wife was stuck indoors for 4 or 5 days, more or less on her own. So it's tough for them, and you know, you've got to be a happy fan to be a happy footballer, I think. Yeah. And that's why I said to Thomas, if you don't feel correct about it, then, you know, do what's going to make you happy.
It's not for everybody.
No.
You know, if a big team comes calling, you can see why people don't need to go. As I said to you before, the Premier League now is more professional than everywhere. The facilities are better than everybody. Yeah. I agree, if a Real Madrid or a Juventus or a Bayern come call and they have special qualities to go to, but not every club in a foreign league is better than what you have here. And if you've got a young family or a young wife or girlfriend or kids in school, why would you want to uproot them and go if you're very happy in England?
And sometimes it's about making sure you get the game time, isn't it? And I think you, as a young person, you do grow as an individual. You know, and it's not just in the Premier League. From our Norwich, with our Norwich head on, Todd Cantwell, who's 2021, playing first team for Norwich now, went to Fortuna Sittard in the Dutch league last season. You do well to have heard of them, but he goes out there, he plays a bunch of games on loan and comes back a better player. And
I don't think Paul and Steve took a risk when they went out because they were established players who could have, gone to any top
but
Premier League.
Is it a risk if you're Jadon Sancho then?
Yeah, I think it is at such a young age because he still has to prove himself.
But you have to prove yourself over here.
But it's, the reason he's gone is he feels he has a better opportunity of progressing there. He doesn't see, he didn't see a way through at Manchester City.
There's lots of time you go out on loan and play, and you play in the Championship and you play in League One or you play abroad. But in the end, we've had this discussion before, you have to play for those particular teams. And when you get the chance to play, you have to play well. So we're talking about Jadon Sancho, and he's playing well at the moment for Dortmund, and he's creating and he's scoring goals. If you went out there and had a year and didn't play much, you'll play 5 times out of 50. Well, it's a bit of a waste of time, isn't it? So you have to grasp the opportunity when you can. It's great because you're learning a multitude of things that you wouldn't learn playing in League One or League Two. But you have to still, it comes down to still the basics of playing football, winning games and playing well when you get the opportunity. Then you can go back and go, right, I'm Jadon Sancho, I've just been great at a Champions League team, a team at the top of the league in Germany.
I think these German and Dutch clubs, I think they're patient because they're young.
Really patient,
they're patient with them. They're going to keep playing and keep playing them. Look at someone like Loftus-Cheek. Comes back at Chelsea. After being a loan at Palace, can't even get a game.
When you look at Ajax, Ince, they're top of the league and absolutely flying, and it's full of kids who've come right through, and they've got the patience to do that, and the patience off the owners to say, you know what, no problem.
Kyle says people are going overboard. There's only really one English player who's gone abroad playing at the top level in Europe, Jadon Sancho. It's great that he looks like he's going to be a big success though. And Aaron says, on Reiss Nelson, what would you do if you were Unai Emery next season? Load him out again or let him start a few games? The only time you can really actually assess the success of Reiss Nelson going abroad is when he comes back to Arsenal and see whether he gets games. Did you ever get an offer abroad or anything?
Not in these guys' league.
He went to Scotland.
Well, actually, David Robertson sent a message saying we all know that learning Glaswegian is a lot harder than Italian or Spanish.
Yeah, no, that's right, David.
What was it? How different was it for you when you went up there? I mean,
well, no, let's not go down that route, Jake. It's still on the same island.
Yeah, but it's. I mean,
what's a foreign? It's a different country, it's a different league.
Different style of football.
I'm not going to go down the route of calling Scottish people foreigners.
Neither are we. I'm just asking you what it was like to go.
You're saying it's a different country within the UK and a different league.
But no, it was like to play for Celtic. I mean, Celtic Rangers games.
Yeah, but it's still British football, isn't it?
Don't put yourself down.
No, I'm not. I mean, you
for.
weren't good enough to get in the Celtic team with Lenny Lambert.
People talk about living in Glasgow was a bit of a goldfish bowl mentality. Was it difficult to live in Glasgow?
But it's different in terms of football.
No, I know.
Culture.
But what was it like living in a city then with such passionate fans, living with fans in Glasgow who disliked Celtic so much then?
Yeah, I mean, it was a goldfish bowl. I mean, it's not like Norwich, Jake. Everybody knows every move in Glasgow. There was an intensity, but in terms of the language, if you listen carefully, you can understand Scottish people.
This is the reason why I said leave him out of this part.
See, we're asking proper questions and he's just knocking them back.
Just pieing us off.
That's because we both know if you've grown up in Norfolk, going anywhere feels like a foreign country.